Well, welcome to the 700 Club. President Trump may have stopped the bleeding on an issue dominating Washington and the media, but his executive order ending the policy of separating immigrant families answers only part of a much bigger question. How do we solve our immigration crisis?
Both the White House and Congress are struggling to find solutions. Our coverage begins with CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy.
President Trump says his executive order, which ends the practice of separating families at the border, shows compassion while still pursuing his zero-tolerance policy for migrants entering the country illegally.
I didn't like the sight or the feeling of families being separated. There's a problem that's gone on for many years, as you know, through many administrations, and we're working very hard on immigration. It's been just left out in the cold. People haven't dealt with it, and we are dealing with it.
The White House was under intense pressure to make a move after images showing children being taken away from their parents and held in detention facilities. Trump made clear the zero-tolerance policy of detaining those entering the country illegally continues, but now kids will stay in detention centers with their parents. He talked about how he got pressure from First Lady Melania Trump and his daughter Ivanka to amend the policy.
Anybody with a heart would feel very strongly about it. We don't like to see families separated. At the same time, we don't want people coming into our country illegally.
Trump hopes lawmakers will match his executive order with legislation addressing the problem of illegal immigration on a broader scale. CBN News congressional correspondent Abigail Robertson has that story from Capitol Hill.
The president may have put a Band-Aid on this situation, but serious issues are likely to keep popping up until Congress finally passes comprehensive immigration reform.
But ultimately, we need a large-scale solution on immigration. Immigration is not an issue that you can just look at and say, we'll pick on one area and ignore all the rest.
A group of Republican senators introduced a quick legislative fix aimed at keeping families together at the border, but it does not address other immigration issues, like protecting the so-called dreamers.
All those are important issues to be resolved that Congress has talked about and dropped, talked about and dropped. It's time to be able to resolve those.
Senators are still frustrated they failed to pass 4 reform bills in February, one which would have prevented separating the families. The House plans to vote on 2 immigration bills Thursday. Representative Kathy McMorris Rogers tells CBN News that while she's pleased with the executive order, it's time for Congress to act.
I believe that we have put forward a really strong proposal that will make sure our border is secure, but also provide a DACA solution.
Brown supports border security, but wants to see it accomplished through technology and additional personnel, not a wall.
A wall that is built is a wall or an obstacle that eventually will, there'll be workarounds and go-arounds. What we need to do is focus on comprehensive immigration reform.
Reporting from Capitol Hill, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
Thanks, Abigail. You know, this is a matter that's unbelievable, and our chief political correspondent, David Brody's joining us now. David, I heard Newt Gingrich saying yesterday that he thought anytime you have a comprehensive bill that won't pass, they've got to take it up bite at a time. Well, what do you think's holding up? What's the main sticking point, do you think, that why they can't pass something?
Well, this has been the Republicans' heel for a long time, Pat, and it's all going to play out Thursday on the House floor. You've got the Freedom Caucus, those conservatives who basically don't want to see any sort of amnesty at all, especially when it comes to the DACA kids. They don't want to see amnesty, and that's what this bill, that's the holdup. I mean, in essence, this bill, this conservative bill that we're hearing about, in essence, would allow for these DACA kids to stay, the dreamers to stay, give them a pathway to citizenship. And here's the other part of it, $25 billion over 5 years for the Trump wall that we've heard so much about. So they're all for that. They're not for the dreamer part of it. That's the hang-up, and that's why it's probably not going to pass unless Mark Meadows, who's the head of the Freedom Caucus, can get his band of brothers, if you will, together and say yes. But at this point, that doesn't look doable.
Well, you know, it's sort of political suicide when you look at states like California, New Mexico, and Utah and others that have a large Hispanic population. It looks like we're anti-immigrant and anti-Hispanic, that the Republicans are just, committing suicide. Why can't they get together, don't you think?
Well, you're right, Pat, and it's been a problem. And guess what? Here are Democrats ready to pounce in the midterm elections, and they do it every year. It's part of the playbook. But quite frankly, a lot of times we hear from conservatives that, oh, the Democrats are using the tired old playbook of, Republicans and the race card and everything. But look, when you're not going for allowing dreamers to stay in this country, which some conservative members of Congress don't want to see, you open yourself up to those criticisms. And, of course, you've got major Senate races in Arizona and Nevada and out there, the areas you talked about. Republicans have to keep control of those seats. They own them right now, or they have them right now. They don't own anything, all right? We the people own everything. But the point is that those two states, Arizona and Nevada, crucial to the Republicans' chances of keeping control of the Senate. This immigration situation is not good, especially in those two states.
Well, Trump sent a signal. He was for the dreamers to help them, but he said, I need law from Congress in order to let them come in. And then it's sort of boomerang, and it's like they're blaming him for it. Tell us about those dreamers. Well, it looks like that would be a no-brainer to let them have citizenship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And as a matter of fact, that is the way the party has been moving. I mean, look, just go back 5 years ago, or even just a couple of years ago, and you wouldn't have seen this, first of all, this bill even come to the floor, let alone this debate kind of moving in that direction. So, yes, I mean, you've got some hardliners. You've got some hardliners that just will not, they don't want to have any sort of what they call amnesty for these dreamers. Why? Let's be honest. They go back to their congressional district. They run as a hardline immigration guy. And then they've got to explain this to voters, and they're protecting their own job in Congress. And that's what this is about. Part of it, though, Pat, I have to say, this is on the president as well. He has to come out specifically for what bill he wants. And he's talked about how there's going to be two bills up in the House today. He's said he's like the moderate bill. He's like the conservative bill. Basically, it's the art of the deal with Trump. He'll take whatever he can get, but he hasn't been very specific. And those House Freedom Caucus members want to make sure that Trump is backing their bill, but Trump really hasn't given any indication that he would back any bill. So he'd back whatever he needs to back, but they're concerned about the confidence they have in this president, not to kind of throw him under the bus afterwards.
It looks like Chuck Schumer isn't going to help anything. He's not going to vote for anything. Is that the posture of the Democrats?
Pretty much. And, Chuck Schumer, of course, said the president can change this with an executive order. And, of course, here we are. The president has an executive order now done and signed. Having said that, that doesn't mean it solves really anything, Pat, as you know. I mean, Congress has to do something. And let's be honest, when President Trump says this is the Democrats' fault, I think his base and the people that have voted for him understand exactly what he's talking about, because in the macro, the laws that the Democrats want, according to Trump, according to many in the conservative party, are open borders. That's what they believe the Democrats have wanted all along. And that, in essence, is the difference between what the Obama administration did when it came to immigration and the Trump administration is doing. We hear zero tolerance. Well, zero tolerance means enforcing the law on the books. With the Obama administration, it was a little bit more as 10 to 20% tolerance policy. In other words, they were okay after 20 days or so. We know this rule's on the books. After 20 days or so, the family would be together, the parent and the children. And then at that point, they would go off into America somewhere, hoping that they would come back at some point for a court date. We never saw it. And that's what was going on under the Obama administration quite a bit. Trump says, no, we're not going to do that. And that's where we are today.
Politically speaking, if there is a policy of open borders, of course, it will destroy our economy. But the Democrats, I think, feel that they're going to gain an enormous number of voters if they get in a whole lot of immigrants that don't quite understand what's going along, that they think they can manipulate them to vote for the Democrats instead of Republicans. Is that the game?
Yeah, that's pretty much the game. They understand that the voting rolls of the Democratic Party will increase, that they will secure presidential election after presidential election to come. And that's the name of the game. And the reason we know this, Pat, is because, look, Under the Obama administration, there were some separation of families. It didn't happen like it's happening now, but there were some separation of families, and we didn't hear many Democrat voices back then, the Chuck Schumers of the world, raising Cain about this, but they're doing it under the Trump administration. So it's not so much that, it's politics, it's open borders. That's what they want. And look, the Democrats won't say we want open borders, but clearly actions speak louder than words.
David, thank you very much for that insight. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the game. It's a political game, and it's being played up to the emotions of people, and all sorts of religious leaders are saying, oh, isn't it awful, we're separating families. Obama separated families. He took children away from parents. He did the same thing. But now it's some horrible thing that's being done, and you've got pictures of little crying children standing behind fences and all this. A lot of these families were told you bring a kid with you and you're guaranteed entrance into the United States. So we're not even sure that these children are actually their own. We're not sure how many of those people are actually married. There's so many things we don't know, and how many of these immigrants are fraudulent, and how many are representing of some drug cartels, et cetera. I mean, it's a mess. But like it or not, the Republicans have got to deal with it. They've got to pass what is called comprehensive immigration law. They've got to set down the law, then they've got to make it clear to everybody else, this is the law, and if you break it, you're going to jail. Don't try us anymore. But as it was, Obama said, well, that may be the law, but we're going to turn the other eye. We're going to not wink at what you're doing, not pay attention, and therefore, millions of people in Latin America were emboldened to try to take the track up to the American border, to Rio Grande, or wherever they're coming in, and break across. That's what they were trying to do. Well, in other news, more Americans are retiring and fewer are taking their place in the workforce. That has enormous implications for our social safety net. Wendy Griffith has that.
That's right, Pat. Baby boomers by the millions are calling it a career, and that's putting a big strain on Social Security. The Wall Street Journal reports 10,000 baby boomers retire every day, and a drop in the birth rate since the 1970s means there are fewer younger workers to take their place. Social Security officials say the government is drawing money from the trust fund for the first time in 36 years to pay those benefits. The rise in state pension payouts is also straining state budgets for programs such as education and health care. Well, NASA is making a stronger effort to protect the Earth from asteroids. America's space agency will lead a project to detect space rocks big enough to destroy whole continents, as well as smaller ones that could wipe out cities or regions. Scientists say they'll need several years to build and target a spacecraft that can divert an asteroid, but they hope to improve detection. In 2013, a 66-foot asteroid exploded over Russia, damaging buildings and injuring a number of people. Pat, remember that?
Well, I sure do remember, and I also remember my book, The End of the Age, that was right on target. You know, when you read the prophecies of Jesus in the Bible, what he says, the only thing that will fulfill that, and that I see that will fulfill all of those, would be an asteroid strike on our planet. And, you know, in my book, mine was 0.6 of a mile. It was, you know, 1,000 kilometers or whatever. But it wasn't that big. But they've got so-called ones that will take out a continent and will actually, like the one that landed in the Yucatan or in that water off there, it was an extinctor. It's what took out the dinosaurs. So we've got a lot of space debris floating around, and it's only the grace of God that protects this planet. The fact that Jupiter is so big and close, they'll suck some of them into its gravitational field. But we are vulnerable. And now, thank goodness, somebody's beginning to take a look at it. But it's been way, way too long. And the other thing that I'm concerned about, I'm asking our news department to look at, is the so-called EMP, the electronic magnetic pulse strike that could take out our power grid. That is a very, very real threat, and we're not doing anything serious about it. So these are two threats that are facing to extinguish our entire planet and cause the deaths of millions of people. One has to do with the asteroid and not knowing what to do, how to identify them and to ward them off if we can. The other is to protect our grid from some kind of a blast, whether solar radiation or a suborbital blast of a nuclear device. Those things are very real, and we're going to be talking about them more because you need to be aware of them.